Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. My name is Sudhir Sahasranaman and you're watching Study with Sudhir. As part of our History, Civics, Geography month, this is the video and this is going to be a slightly longish video on the first part of Gandhian history. If you look at your total history, the Morning Star book on history and civics, you will find that there are 4 chapters. The first chapter that deals with non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. The next one with Quit India movement, then the Subhash Chandra Bose chapter, and then finally the Indian Independence Act. Let me also tell you that the first part of your history syllabus, that is extending from the first war of independence till the Muslim League and the Lucknow Pact chapters, have all been done in English. Earlier they were done in Hindi. Now I have done in English over the last few months. So they are there already. So please go and have a look at them. All of them done in English very, very thoroughly. So they will be very useful to all of you. There is also an introduction video which many of you would find interesting. So please go through. There are, I think, about 5-6 videos dealing with that part. This part is dealing with the Gandhian history period. Okay, and we will do it in 4 videos or so. So let's get started. I enjoyed preparing afresh for this particular video and I do hope you enjoy it as well. As I said, as I always say, just like I said in the world history video also, listen to it like a story. You will enjoy it more. You will understand it better. Focus on the understanding. You can read the chapter again after 2-3 days. That will help you. But keep a notebook and pen so that you can note down the key points and also keep listening to the kind of words and language I use, because much of it you can actually use in your answers. Okay, so let's get started. Yes, before I start, share the SWS videos with your friends. You share it with your juniors next year. And if you have not subscribed, press on that subscribe button, press on that bell icon so that you can get the notification whenever we post a fresh video. Okay, now the first obvious question that arises is, why is it called the Gandhian era? It is called the Gandhian era because if there was one person who pretty much dominated this period, starting from around 1915 till his assassination in January 1948, it was Mahatma Gandhi, whose original name was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, also known as Bapu. So he completely dominated the Indian national movement. Let me just reduce it a bit so that it kind of fits it into the page. Okay. Now, it does not mean that other leaders were not important or they were less significant or they were not relevant. Of course, there are a whole lot of galaxy of leaders who were part of the Indian freedom struggle in different parts of India at different stages of the Indian independence movement, played a key role. So they are, of course, important. In the previous section, we have read about people like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. All of them played a stellar role. But this period is known as Gandhian history largely because of the domination of one person whose thought and philosophy of non-violence and satyagraha pretty much became the voice of the Indian freedom movement. Okay, so I'm not saying that it's not important to recognize other leaders. Of course, it's important to recognize the contribution, the immense contributions of each one of those leaders. Now, let's briefly understand about Mahatma Gandhi. What did he do in South Africa that ensured that by the time he landed in India, he was already a known figure? There was a whole lot of curiosity about who is this man called Gandhi? Who is this man called Gandhi who created quite a stir in South Africa? Now, he was born in Porbandar in modern day Gujarat in 1869. He went to England to study law. He became a barrister. And from 1893 and to 1914, he practiced law initially in Bombay, presently Mumbai, and then in South Africa. Now, in South Africa, an incident changed his life, as is obvious from the second illustration. He was traveling in a first class compartment, and even though he was holding a ticket, he was thrown out of that train which was going from Durban to Pretoria uh, on a particular day. So he was thrown out. I think that was on the 7th of June, if I'm not mistaken. Just check the date. I think it is the 7th of June. So he was thrown out, and that made him realize that this is a land which racially discriminates against the non-whites. Anyone who is not a white by skin color is discriminated against in South Africa, which is known as apartheid. And he decided to protest against this kind of racial injustice and racial discrimination. So he became the leader of the struggle for justice in South Africa. He formed a party called the Natal Indian Congress, and that kind of led. He was also imprisoned, and he basically was leading a non-violent civil disobedience movement against the white government and white administration in South Africa. So that again was something very important. And he realized that, that's where he first tested his principles of satyagraha, which is like, offering protest, but in a non-violent manner. So he kind of tested his principles of satyagraha and non-violence initially in South Africa. He returned to India in January 1915. So this is his background in South Africa. Now, subsequent to coming here, he undertook a Bharat Yatra to understand what this land and its problems are all about. But there are three satyagrahas that he undertook in 1917 and 1918 which stand out for the sheer manner in which he conducted those agitations, also for the success that he gained during those agitations. The first one of them was the Champaran Satyagraha in 1917. Okay, now what really happened in Champaran? Champaran is in modern day Bihar. The indigo is a plant, a blue color plant with lovely blue color flowers. The Champaran farmers, the indigo peasants, the farmers who grew indigo, they were exploited by the European planters, largely British planters, because they had imposed a law by which you needed to grow indigo on 3/20th of the land. Okay, this was known as the Tinkatia system. Okay, this was known as the Tinkatia, Tin as in three, Tinkatia system, and sell it to the British. And that's more important, that you needed to sell it to the British at the prices which will be fixed by the British. So if I am an indigo farmer, I cannot decide at what cost I want to sell my indigo crop. That will be decided by the British. So Mahatma Gandhi took up their cause. And in the illustration that I have made, it is very obvious. You can see the blue color crop, that is the indigo cultivation. You can see those poor indigo peasants who are being addressed by Mahatma Gandhi, even as the police officers of the British administration are standing guard. So Gandhi took up their cause. He offered satyagraha. Inquiry was ordered, and the cultivators got relief. In fact, there is a chapter called Indigo in CBSE class 12. Okay, I think the book will be changed by the time you read. But if you get an opportunity to borrow that Flamingo textbook from any of your seniors who are in CBSE class 12, please do so, because it will give you an idea. And for those of you who are curious, it's an interesting 7 to 8 page read. It's a good read to do because it gives you a certain perspective. It's about the story of the Champaran Satyagraha, Mahatma Gandhi traveling to Champaran. The second one was the Ahmedabad Satyagraha in 1918. Now, what happened now? If Champaran was rural India, this one was urban or semi-urban India in Ahmedabad. Mahatma Gandhi led the mill workers, because as you know, you would have read that in class 10 in geography, Gujarat is a land which is known for its cotton cultivation, right? The maximum cotton production takes place in the state of Gujarat. So there are a whole lot of cotton mills in Gujarat, in and around Ahmedabad. So there the mill workers, he led them on a strike against the mill owners to demand higher wages, that you needed more wages. He sat on a hunger strike, and finally there was an agreement on 35% increase in wages for the mill workers. So this was his second success story. Okay, the third one again was in the land of his birth, which is Gujarat. This one was Kheda Satyagraha in 1918, where crops failed. So this was again about farmers. Crops failed, but the farmers were forced to pay the land revenue, which is known as Lagan, right? Lagan, I don't know if anyone of you have seen the 2001 movie of Amir Khan called Lagan. So there also, even if you have drought, even if your crops have failed, you still have to pay the tax to the British government, right? So that's what the issue was in Kheda, and Satyagraha was conducted by Mahatma Gandhi and and the fellow farmers. And this is important because it was during this Kheda Satyagraha that he was introduced to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel during this struggle. Okay, so this is important as far as the three satyagrahas were conducted by Mahatma Gandhi 1917 and 1918. Now let's look at the methods which were adopted. How do you like my illustrations, the AI illustrations? Good, no? I was very happy with it. The methods adopted by Mahatma Gandhi. And here you need to know about three methods essentially. The first one of them being satyagraha, the second one of them being the doctrine of non-violence, and the third one of them is Swadeshi, and that's directly linked to this illustration that I have put here. Now, when you're talking about satyagraha and non-violence, I just now mentioned that this was initial stages of it, or initial experiments with it was done by Mahatma Gandhi when he was in South Africa. Now, satyagraha, as the word indicates, satya, you obviously know it means truth, and agraha, agraha means insistence. You know, मैं आग्रह करता हूं, in Hindi they say, no, मैं आपसे आग्रह करता हूं means that I kind of request, I insist, you know, I insist, मैं आपसे आग्रह करता हूं कि आप हमारे घर पर भोजन खाइए, that I insist that you have lunch at our home. So agraha means insist. So it is essentially an insistence on truth and insistence to hold fast. So it is basically a moral force born out of truth and non-violence. So it meant to be fearless. It meant to be speaking the truth and not to be afraid to speak the truth. And if anyone forces you to do something which you are not willing to do, you would be willing to suffer the atrocities which are committed on you. If there is physical force applied on you, you will suffer that thing, but you will not be willing to do the injustice that he is expecting you to do. So that is what is satyagraha. That, you know, you stand true to your doctrine of truth. So, but at the same time, it will not involve hatred towards a person who is doing the wrong to you. You will not agree with what that person is doing to you, but you will not hate that person. So there is a distinction. You will not approve of what he is doing, but it doesn't mean that I hate the person who is doing it. It's quite possible that he may be only, you know, carrying out the orders which have been given by his British superiors, right? But you will offer what is called satyagraha, which is rooted in truth. Insist on doing the right thing, insist on speaking the truth. The second one is the doctrine of non-violence, again, that you protest in a non-violent manner against the British system of exploitation. But it doesn't mean that you hate the entire British people. No, you don't. You are protesting against the injustice of the systems which have been followed by the British administrators. So there is a distinction that the Mahatma tried to make. The third one is Swadeshi, where Swadeshi essentially means that you produce whatever items you need in your own country yourself, that you do not buy the foreign goods which the British firms are selling to you. You sell your own thing so that you become Atmanirbhar. Right now, the government, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's slogan of Atmanirbhar Bharat is essentially another form of Swadeshi. That is, you become Atmanirbhar in almost everything. You don't need to rely on imported goods. You don't need to buy. For example, if there is a popular brand, let that be made in India, not be made in USA or not be made in China. You use goods which are made in India because that would mean it has been made by an Indian hand and has generated employment in India. So that is essentially as far as Swadeshi is concerned. So within Swadeshi, you are also talking about the charkha at that time, the charkha. You are talking about the use of khadi cloth, what Mahatma is wearing. And this essentially meant, uh, you know, popularizing this kind of cloth. The other important thing which you need to also know about, I mean, apart from violence, what the Hindi word is of ahimsa. But ahimsa does not essentially only mean not using physical violence. That even in terms of speaking, you don't say anything which may come across as violent, verbal violence, or you think ill of someone, including sentiments of jealousy. That is mental violence, right? So you do not do anything which may be seen as himsa against anyone. I hope these methods adopted by Mahatma Gandhi are clear to you. As I said, focus on understanding. You have clarity. I'm telling you, nothing can stop you from scoring an 80 on 80. Now, yeah, there's another thing which many of you have been asking about. So, a quick information note: if you are looking for the best question bank for ICSE class 10, any subject, we are recommending the Oswald Books question bank better than any question bank. Also, see, what goes in their favor is that they are one of the oldest publishers in the academic space. That gives them a huge advantage. Plus, the kind of faculty they have which prepares these question banks, it makes a huge difference when a history teacher is making the history civics question bank, when a chemistry teacher is making the chemistry question bank, when a computer applications expert is making the computer applications question bank. Makes a huge difference. So what you have is mind maps, chapter wise papers, notes, MCQs, previous year question papers, solved papers, and here you can use my author coupon code of Sudhir 10 in order to get additional discount. That will be on the oswaldbooks.com, their website. When you order, not on Amazon, you can get an additional 10% discount. So this is for your information. Let's move forward. And now let's come to the non-cooperation movement, which is the first of the three big movements. We learned about the three movements, but the first three movements, Champaran, Kheda, and Ahmedabad, what's the difference? They were localized. Champaran Satyagraha was in Champaran. Ahmedabad was only about the mill workers in Ahmedabad. Kheda was in Kheda. But non-cooperation movement and subsequently civil disobedience movement, and after that the Quit India movement were on a all India scale. So that is the big difference. The normal confusion, I'll tell you about the mistake many of your seniors made, is to get confused between this movement, because see, ultimately the aim of all the movements is the independence of India, right? But there are subtle differences between the three, which I will focus on. But you need to kind of make it in a tabular form, and that will always help you in understanding. So make your own tabular form notes. That will really help you. So what did Mahatma Gandhi say about the non-cooperation movement? Because he said non-cooperation with evil is as much of a duty for every Indian as is cooperation with good. It's not okay if you say that, I cooperate with all the good things. No, you also need to not cooperate with what is wrong, with what is evil. So this is what Mahatma Gandhi said. So what really were the causes that we are talking about? Let me just tell you, just rewind a bit and tell you, because this is sometimes a question which has come previously. What's the difference between satyagraha and passive resistance? Now, satyagraha excludes the use of violence. It says no violence, while passive resistance does not exclude the use of physical force for purpose of this achieving one's objectives. But Mahatma Gandhi essentially believed in satyagraha. Okay, now that was one point which I missed out. Now let's look at the causes which led to the non-cooperation movement. The first one is we need to know about the Khilafat movement. What exactly is the Khilafat movement? In the world history video, one of the points, if you remember, was the fall of the Ottoman Empire, right? Now, that happened when? During the First World War. What we are talking about is also when the First World War is happening, which is why I'm doing these videos back to back, because you need to know that these two events are happening parallel. First World War happened between 1914 and 1918, right? This one happened the lead up, and it started in 1919, 1920. So it's almost kind of parallel. Now, Khilafat movement, what exactly was the thing was, Muslims in India, they were unhappy. They resented the treatment which was meted out to the Caliph of Turkey, because Caliph of Turkey was respected by all the Muslims, including the Muslim community of India. He was seen as a Sultan of Turkey, and he was stripped of all kind of authority. And Muslims were unhappy about it, and therefore they started the Khilafat movement. So, what were their major demands? They had three main demands: that the Ottoman Empire should be retained by the Sultan of Turkey. Okay, so this should be under the control of the Sultan. Okay, which eventually did not happen. The second one was that the Caliph of Turkey should have sufficient territory to rule over. Okay, and then the Arab lands should be under Muslim rule. It should not be under the rule of any of the European imperial powers. So, Arab lands included what? Palestine, Iraq, Syria, and Arabia. How do you remember this? You remember this as Pisa. Palestine, Iraq, Syria, and Arabia. Okay, so this is how you remember. Leaning Tower of Pisa, you would remember. So Pisa is something which you can remember it as. Who were the leaders of the Khilafat movement? All the Muslim leaders. They were Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, who were known as the Ali brothers. Then there was Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, who subsequently became, he was a very prominent leader also of the Congress thereafter, and he became the first education minister of independent India. Hakim Ajmal Khan. Okay, there is an Ajmal Khan Road in Delhi, for those of you who may be familiar, and Hasrat Mohani. So these are the five gentlemen who were the leaders of the Khilafat movement. And 17th of October 1919 was observed as Khilafat Day. So these are some of the key points that you need to remember. Now, before we get into the Rowlatt Act, you may ask, why did Mahatma Gandhi choose to support the Khilafat movement? Because that's essentially a Muslim community struggle. What was really the need for Mahatma Gandhi to support the Khilafat movement? Because he saw in his support to the Khilafat movement an opportunity to unite the Hindus and the Muslims. Okay, so as a result of the Khilafat movement, you had the foreign goods were picketed, which was again what Mahatma Gandhi also wanted. Schools and colleges were boycotted by the people, which is again what Mahatma Gandhi wanted. People resigned their government jobs, again what Gandhi wanted. In 1920, the Khilafat and the non-cooperation movements merged. So that was the idea, to present, just like in 1857, a combined and a joint Hindu and Muslim joint struggle, because the British were, practicing divide and rule. Mahatma Gandhi wanted to defeat the British intention. Okay. Subsequently, the Ali brothers were arrested on charges of spreading discontent and sedition among the people. The second major cause, and this is something very major, was the Rowlatt Act. Okay, you can see in the photograph, it obviously looks very dominating. What exactly was it? The Sedition Act, headed by Justice Rowlatt, which is why it's called the Rowlatt Act, its aim was to curb the upsurge against the British government in India. Okay, to curb it with a very strong iron hand. So what did it say? That any Indian, any person, okay, can be. So basically what Rowlatt Act did was, he gave two bills which were introduced in the central legislature in the year 1919, and the act authorized anyone to be arrested without a warrant. The police did not need reason to arrest X, Y, or Z. It could arrest anyone. There was in-camera trial, which meant that it would not be open to the public to listen to what arguments were being put forth inside court. There were restrictions on movement of individuals and suspension of right of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus, we will study in the judiciary chapter. It essentially means that if someone is missing, I have the right to go to the court and say that, well, I suspect that either the government or some individual or some group of individuals have kidnapped or abducted this particular person. I want that particular person to be produced so that I'm sure that he has not been killed, right? So that is the habeas corpus petition which is filed in any court, right? They suspended that also. That's so if somebody I know is missing, I can't go to court and file a petition against that. So you see, basically your fundamental rights were being curbed as a result of this draconian act, which is why the Rowlatt Act was known as the Black Bill. This is an MCQ kind of a question that you may be that you may be asked. Okay, so this is very important, the Rowlatt Act. Why I have put all these lovely illustrations is also because of the picture related questions that you get earlier. And I'm talking about 3 to 4 years and before that, you would only get the pictures which are there in your textbook. No longer so. What you are now getting are illustrations, AI images, cartoons, newspaper headlines. So you need to have a better understanding in order to be able to correlate what is there in the illustration or the newspaper headline with what you know as part of your syllabus. I hope I am clear. The next big cause was the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy. Huge. I saw a movie the other day, Kesari 2, which I thought was done very badly. You should see this scene in Gandhi film. Please take out some time. It will be available on YouTube. Please see Gandhi film. If not the entire film, at least see the Jallianwala Bagh scene. It's so moving, so moving. Please see that. This happened on the 13th of April 1919. Okay, a large crowd, peaceful crowd, had gathered in Amritsar to protest against the arrest of two individuals, Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu and Dr. Satyapal. These two gentlemen had been arrested by the British administration, Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu, Kitchlu, and Dr. Satyapal. The police had that particular ground, Jallianwala Bagh, had only one exit, one entry point. The same was also the exit point. So General Dyer, who was the military commander of Amritsar, he kind of entered, blocked the entry exit, and he ordered firing without any kind of provocation. He subsequently claimed that they were all armed, which is not true because many of them were women and little children. He ordered firing on those protesters, killing over 1,000 innocent people, many of them jumping into the well in order to ensure that they were not shot, but eventually they all ended up dying. The British official records put the death toll at 379 and 1,200 people injured, but obviously it was much less than the actual number of people who were killed at the hands of this General Dyer. Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore returned his knighthood. He had been knighted, means he was called Sir Rabindranath Tagore. He returned his knighthood to the British king in protest, and this was like a black day as far as Indian freedom struggle was concerned. The Jallianwala Bagh tragedy. Now, what did the non-cooperation movement aim to do? What were the aims and objectives of the non-cooperation movement? The first one was to attain self-government within the British Empire if possible and outside if necessary. That, okay, let's, as a first step, at least let us have our own government with our own people. Okay, we may be still under the British government, but at least have our own government instead of having Britishers rule over us. That was the first step. If possible, we would want to be completely independent. Who wouldn't want to be completely independent? But at least as a first step. The second one was Rowlatt Act should go, because what we have seen, it was, certainly not a good thing. It was certainly not it was not something which was desirable because many Indians had been arrested under the Rowlatt Act. Then regret. They wanted Britain to express regret for what had happened at Jallianwala Bagh. They wanted Britain to apologize, to ask for forgiveness. And number four, they wanted Britain to remedy what wrong had been done to Turkey, whatever the demands were of the Khilafat movement. Because as I said, the Khilafat movement and the non-cooperation movement merged. So as a result, so they wanted that kind of a thing to happen, that the Khilafat wrong also should be remedied. So these four objectives are important as far as the non-cooperation movement are concerned. Now, what happened also as part of the entire non-cooperation movement, as you can see in these pictures, programs like Swadeshi, boycott programs were undertaken under the non-cooperation movement. Foreign goods were boycotted. People refused to attend government functions. Many resigned from the nominated seats in local body governments because some Indians would be nominated. They resigned. There were hand spinning was promoted, untouchability they wanted to remove, uh, they wanted to have uh, panchayats to kind of indulge in any kind of arbitration. There is a dispute between A and B, the local panchayat will sit and arbitrate and settle the dispute. What were the activities? The Congress boycotted the elections to the legislature, did not take field candidates. Charkhas were manufactured, what you saw, the spinning wheel in Mahatma Gandhi's hands, in order for people to spin cloth, because that became a symbol of protest. That became a symbol of protest against the British rule. And there were many lawyers like Motilal Nehru, that is father of Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the first president of India. They gave up legal practice and joined the freedom struggle. Rajendra Prasad again is in the chapter called Indigo. He was also part of the Champaran struggle. And Jamia Millia Islamia was established near Delhi. The Prince of Wales visited India in 1921. His visit was boycotted by the Congress. Hartal was observed, and at one place, the mob turned unruly, and 59 people were killed in the firing. And there were also communal clashes which took place in the Malabar region of Kerala, which is the northern part of Kerala. These are some of the activities which you should know about. It's there mentioned in your book, so you can just go through that book. It's not like the most important as part of the notes. How did the government react? A lot of people were arrested, including Mahatma Gandhi, except Mahatma Gandhi, and Khilafat and Congress volunteer organizations were declared illegal. Now comes the turning point. This is important. This happened, as you can see in the illustration. A police station was set on fire in Chauri Chaura, which is a village in Gorakhpur district in modern day Uttar Pradesh. This happened in February 1922. The police station was set on fire, and there were 22 people who were killed, all of them policemen, because they were trapped inside the police station. Mahatma Gandhi was shocked by this because his entire philosophy was that of non-violence. But if you are going to adopt violence, then what is the difference between India and the Britishers? That was his argument. So he withdrew the non-cooperation movement. As the leader of the non-cooperation movement, he decided to withdraw the non-cooperation movement. Not that others were happy with what he did. There was criticism by people like Subhash Chandra Bose, Motilal Nehru, Lala Lajpat Rai to the decision taken by Mahatma Gandhi, who thought that this particular movement was catching momentum, was gaining momentum. To withdraw it at that time, which meant that you're going back to stage zero, and they thought that was an extremely bad idea, right? So they protested against it, but this was a decision taken by Mahatma Gandhi that the non-cooperation movement would be withdrawn. Okay, now in some books the date is mentioned as 4th of February. In some books it will be mentioned as 5th of February, right? Probably because the entire incident took place on the intervening night of 4th and 5th February, right? Which is why this kind of a dichotomy. So there were some 3,000 farmers. What exactly happened was there were some 3,000 farmers who marched to Chauri Chaura because some of them had been taken into custody by the police there, or they had beaten up some volunteers who were protesting against a liquor shop in Chauri Chaura, and the police fired at the protest farmers. So the police station was set on fire. So the Mahatma Gandhi withdrew the movement on the 12th of February 1922. The non-cooperation movement was withdrawn, and Mahatma Gandhi was accused by the British of causing this tragedy and sentenced him to prison for 6 years. But the Mahatma Gandhi, the non-cooperation movement definitely had its impact. Okay, it was not as though it did not have its impact. The first thing was the Indian freedom struggle now became a mass movement, and that was a big success. It became a mass movement that everybody was involved. As my illustration shows, there was unity within the country, irrespective of which region you came from. It fostered Hindu-Muslim unity because of joining hands with the Khilafat movement. It promoted social reforms. You are talking about untouchability. You are talking about various other things like spinning your own cloth, right? Promoting Swadeshi, promoting the use of charkha. So there were these social reforms also taking place at the same time. Education, in the field of education, a lot of institutions coming up. So there were those kind of social and education related reforms. And Congress for the first time became an action oriented mass organization. Earlier, if you remember the earlier one, the assertive nationalists versus the moderate nationalists, they were much more, it wasn't one, they were not able to make it a mass movement, and number two, they were not able to make it into uh, a movement which would kind of be an all India kind of a thing and more action, right? Now, with the help of the non-cooperation movement, they were able to do precisely that. Okay, that is as far as the, and obviously it gave a lot of confidence to the people that the colonial rule of the British could actually be challenged. And there was this notion that, the sun never sets on the British Empire because they had colonies all over the world. So as a result of which, at some place or the other, the sun would be shining on some part of the British Empire, which is why this line that the sun never sets on the British Empire. People started believing that we can actually throw them out of India. So people started getting that confidence. Now let's move to the civil disobedience movement. What really happened? Now, Mahatma Gandhi gave this call almost a decade, nearly a decade, not nearly a decade, about 8 years after he suspended that movement in after the Chauri Chaura incident. This happened in 1930. What was the main objective of the civil disobedience movement? His attempt, or the civil disobedience movement's attempt, was to paralyze the administration. You see, the main word out here is disobey. I will not obey you. Earlier was I will not cooperate with you. That is a milder version. But now I'm saying I will not obey you. Okay, I will not obey you. It's like this, you see. Your mother asks you to do something, or she's doing something, and she expects you also to help her out. You don't help. Okay, you are not cooperating with her. Okay, but later on, she says, I want you to go to the market and get 2 kg of sugar. You say, I will not do this. That is disobedience. It is an outright, more assertive way of saying, I will not obey the rule that you are set, right? Don't do this at home. This is just an example I took so that you are able to relate to it. So Mahatma Gandhi gave this call in 1930. The attempt was to paralyze the administration by breaking specific rules which were imposed by the British. Okay, what were the causes? What led to the civil disobedience movement? Non-cooperation movement 1922. What? Nothing happened for 8 years. Many of the people were in jail. What happened that it led to the civil disobedience movement in 1930? The big cause was the arrival of the Simon Commission in the year 1927, 1928. Now, the Simon Commission was headed by one particular gentleman. 1 minute. Called Sir John Simon. Okay, John Simon. He was heading, which is why it was known as the Simon Commission. That you can see Simon go back. Why were people saying Simon go back? Because he had come, his team had come to investigate the need for constitutional reform so that we could give some lollipop to the Indians, saying that, okay, we will give you some bit of rights here and there. So they were here to investigate whether they need it, and if they needed, what is it that the Indians needed. Okay, so that was the basic mandate, the basic objective of this Simon Commission. The problem was that it consisted of 7 British members of parliament. So there were 7 MPs, okay, but all of them were Englishmen. Okay, there was no Indian. So they were greeted with black flags, saying that Simon, go back. Okay, Simon, वापस जाओ. Okay, so that is what, because when there was no Indian, it was seen as a violation of the principle of self-determination and hurting the self-respect. Basically, it's telling the Indians, you guys don't even deserve to be a member of the Simon Commission. You know, तुम्हारी औकात नहीं है. So it was seen as an insult to the people of India, the self-respect of the people of India. So which is why there was strong opposition and protest. So there were black flags which greeted the Simon Commission. There were hartals which were observed. And Lala Lajpat Rai, about who we have studied in the first part of the history syllabus, he was injured in a lathi charge in Lahore on 30th October 1928, and subsequently he passed away. Lala Lajpat Rai, one of the lion who was known as the Lion of Punjab, Sher-e-Punjab. The second cause was the declaration of Purna Swaraj, which means complete independence, nothing short of Purna Swaraj, which was announced in Lahore in 1929. You can see this happened on the banks of river Ravi. Okay, Ravi near Lahore. So there was a lot of anger. This happened in 1929. 1928 is when Lala Lajpat Rai was injured in the Lathi charge and he died. So there was a lot of anger because Lala Lajpat Rai was one of the foremost leaders of the Indian independence movement. So there was a lot of anger. So we said that we want Purna Swaraj and nothing short of Purna Swaraj, right? So the Lahore session of the Indian National Congress in 1929, okay, in Lahore, it passed a resolution saying Purna Swaraj, which is complete independence, is the objective of the Indian National Congress. Okay, now in all these flags, please don't, I mean, this is a mistake, but I mean, it's not a mistake. At that time, the Congress flag had the charkha. Okay, here when you create images on AI, obviously they do it with the tricolor, with the Ashok Chakra. So that is a difference. But I mean, it's these are basically more representative photographs, illustrations than kind of being 100% accurate. AI is not 100% accurate. So Jawaharlal Nehru was the president of the Indian National Congress at the Lahore session. So he hoisted the flag on the banks of River Ravi that you can see behind you, and 26th January was observed as Purna Swaraj Day. 26th January as Complete Independence Day. That is what was chosen. This happened in December 1929. And they said 26th January will be celebrated as Purna Swaraj Day. Then came the turning point, which was the Dandi March. That's how the civil disobedience movement started. Now, Mahatma Gandhi thought, what is it that one sign that will kind of indicate civil disobedience? So he decided that salt is something which is used by every Indian, irrespective of religion, irrespective of which region somebody comes from, be it a Tamilian or a Punjabi or a Bengali or a Maharashtrian, everybody will use salt in their food, vegetarians as well as non-vegetarians, right? So irrespective of caste, religion, region, economic status, language spoken, everyone uses salt. So it was seen as a common binding force. Okay. Also, the Salt Act of 1882, and this is something important, and that is what he was defying. The British Salt Act, okay, it said Indians cannot collect salt or sell salt which is collected from the seashore. When you're at the seashore, you can manufacture salt. The salt which is left behind by the sea waves, there is a way of collecting that salt and then subsequently selling it. British said you cannot do that. So Indians were forced to buy salt, on which a heavy salt tax was imposed, which Indians objected to. So Mahatma Gandhi said that this is a common point. So he decided to march to Dandi. He started from Sabarmati Ashram near Ahmedabad on the 12th of March, reached Dandi, which was on a village on the coast of Gujarat, on the 6th of April 1930, and picked up a fist of salt and violated the British salt law. Okay, that's why Dandi March marked the beginning of the civil disobedience movement in 1930. And Subhash Chandra Bose, interestingly, he compared Gandhi's Dandi March to Napoleon's march on Paris, right? He kind of thought it was like that, it was that much of a big thing. So as per the civil disobedience movement, the salt laws were defined that we will break the salt laws, we will collect the salt, we will sell the salt, we will not buy your salt on which you are imposing this salt tax. All the liquor shops, they were boycotted. Foreign cloth, this is similar to non-cooperation movement, was boycotted. Taxes, we refuse to pay taxes. You are imposing this tax, I will not pay tax. Okay, so that is something which happened as a result of the civil disobedience movement. There were a lot of mass strikes. There are parallel governments which are set up in many places, that we will set up our own government. We will administer ourselves. We will not let the British law be implemented in our village. It cannot happen all India, but in small places in different parts of India. The Pathans, they organized something which was known as Society of Khudai Khidmatgars. T. Okay, which is essentially means servants of God under the leadership of Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, who was known as Frontier Gandhi. He came from the what is now modern day Pakistan. Then the Northwest Frontier Province. In Nagaland, there was a 13-year-old called Rani Gadelilu who raised the banner of revolt. The British government resorted to firing at many places, lathi charge at many places, jailed many people. There were restrictions which were placed on the media, the press. The Congress Party was declared an illegal organization, and it shattered people's faith in the British. Okay, these people are so cruel. This is what they do to us. They come and rule over us, and this is how they behave with us. And the first roundtable conference was held. Uh, the first roundtable conference was held in London, but the Congress did not take part in it. So these were all the things which happened under the all these things happened under the civil disobedience movement, which you need to know about. Now, how was this resolved? There was this huge confrontation taking place, right? 1930 in India was a very turbulent time. I mean, we are like what, 95 years since then, right? So, what happened as a result? The Gandhi Irwin Pact happened. Lord Irwin was the Viceroy of India at that point in time. Tej Bahadur Sapru and Jaikar, they negotiated on behalf of the Congress, and Lord Irwin, who was the viceroy, under him the British government agreed to some conditions. They said that there will be a political agreement which was signed before the second roundtable conference, which was to be held in London. Okay, so this was an illustration which kind of shows Mahatma Gandhi and Lord Irwin signing the pact on the 5th of March 1931. I would advise you to remember this particular date. What happened as part of this particular pact? The Britishers agreed to release all political prisoners except those who were guilty of violence, in the sense kill somebody or damage some or vandalize some property, government property. Unless it is that kind of a thing, they released all political prisoners, who were just kind of arrested for protesting. They allowed, this was a big victory, the free collection of salt. So the Salt Act of 1882 was torn apart and thrown out of the window. They allowed peaceful picketing of liquor shops, any shop selling foreign cloth. Picketing means you go outside and protest, raise slogans and protest against any shop which is selling foreign cloth or any liquor shop. The Congress on its part agreed to suspend the civil disobedience movement. They said, okay, we will now suspend the civil disobedience movement. And Congress decided to participate in the second roundtable conference, which is going to take place in London in the last 3 months of 1931. And Mahatma Gandhi was to be the representative of the party. Now, what happened at the second roundtable conference? It happened from September to December 1931. Mahatma Gandhi was the representative of the Congress. The talks were deadlocked because basically it happened on the issue of minorities issue, because Muslims and depressed classes is what is known as the depressed classes, what we call the scheduled caste now. Okay, this SCs, Anglo Indians, they all wanted separate electorate. So no, Mahatma Gandhi did not want all this divide and rule kind of thing. And Britain refused to accept the demand even for dominion status. Dominion status essentially means self-governing member state, but under the British crown. Okay, that we want our own self-government. Britain refused to accept it. So in that sense, the civil disobedience movement, except for the few demands of the salt tax, etc., did not achieve much for India in that sense. Okay, which is why the civil disobedience movement was revived again in 1932. But somehow, once you suspend something, it's very difficult to revive it again. So it did not kind of catch up again. And it was finally withdrawn in 1934. And Mahatma Gandhi, in fact, briefly retired from active politics. For some time, he said, I'm moving away from politics. Okay, so with this, we come to the end of this particular chapter on Gandhian history, Khilafat movement, non-cooperation movement, and civil disobedience movement. I've gone through it slowly so that you can understand. So thank you very much for your time and patience. I'll meet you in the next chapter in which we will deal with the Quit India movement, which was in 1942, much more closer to the independence of India. In that sense, it was far more effective than the non-cooperation and the civil disobedience movements. Okay, thank you very much. Tata, bye bye. God bless you. Take care. Namaskar.